Hey, Kevin here, Mr. DIY Dork from DIYDork.com. Today I'm going to show you how we are building the really simple kind of modern style porch in front of our house. So check this out. Alright, so we've been siding our house and this is the front. We just finished up the top part today. Had to build up a whole bunch of scaffolding to get up there, 25 feet. And we got it all finished, but before we can do the rest of it down here on the bottom, we really have to figure out the framing for our porch and at least get that set up. Then we can finish siding and then put the roof porch on. So what we decided to do was go ahead and build it basically the same size as the concrete pad right here. So it's going to be basically from that end to there, but just above the door, and it's going to hang out just about the same distance. Now another thing we're going to do is when it goes up, it's actually going to come down at an angle. We're going to put galvanized metal on there, and then we're also going to have some flashing going on top. So that's kind of why we're building it now, because the flashing has to go behind this metal and just all kinds of things are going on. So anyway, we're going to figure it out today. Now another thing is that it's going to basically, we're going to have a ledger board going across here the full width, and we're going to have a couple of boards coming out this way. We're going to have some others going across that the metal will screw to. You'll see all that later. But we also have to have some arms that's going to stick down, that's going to support, you know, basically from the end all the way down to the wall to kind of form like a triangular support. So those have to be supported into a stud in the wall. So what we did is, before we laid out all of the tar paper, we actually figured out where studs were and we drew lines on there. So I don't really know if you can see them, but hopefully you can. We drew lines everywhere there's a stud, and the ones on the end is the most important, because like I said, the arm is going to come down here and we're going to lag bolt it into there. So we had to find that stud first, and then once we did that, we figured out the width, and we're going to cut our ledger board. The ledger board is the one that will just bolt straight to the wall of the house, and then all the supports will come out of it. So that's what I'll show you next. So here's our old porch. It's upside down and it's covered by a little bit of metal siding, but you can kind of see how they originally built it. It has all kinds of flashing on there. They have 10 2x4 supports. There's plywood on top. It had giant like 2x6 arms, and this thing was a beast. When we took it off, it fell down like you wouldn't believe. It was super dangerous. But anyway, we're gonna basically do the same size, and I kept this so that we could figure out the angles and all that. But it's going to be that size, but instead of just doing regular wood and covering it with shingles or whatever and flashing, I decided to make it more exposed and lightweight, kind of clean and simple. So what we're going to use is this wood right here. Now this is actually red cedar, and I'm using it because it's naturally rot resistant, so we don't have to put any paint on it or anything. The only thing we are going to do is oil it up, which will enrichen the color and you know, just help protect it a little bit more. But the wood is going to be totally exposed. Like this one right here, you can see the studs, but before we tore it down, they actually had paneling underneath there, so it was just totally enclosed. But we want ours open so you can see the wood structure, so that's why we're using this red cedar. But anyway, this is going to be the ledger board. It's a 2x6. I'm going to build everything else out of 2x4s just to keep it a little bit lighter weight, except for the arms, which we're not going to have the frilly detail like that, but we're going to use 2x6s there as well, just for a little extra support. So anyway, we're going to chop this one down, and then what we're going to do is take it up there and fit it, and then every other stud we're going to put a lag bolt in it to help hold it up, and that's what we're going to do next. So now we have our ledger board here. What we did is we went ahead and cut it to length that we needed, and then I marked on here where all the studs were. And then what I did was I drilled a hole at every other stud. So there's technically going to be a stud on the house wall here, and there's one here. It's every 16 inches. So basically I'm going to put a lag bolt every 32 inches. Now you may notice there's some lines here. What we did is we took the length of our board here and we divided it evenly so that we could have, let's see, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's going to be 6 braced, you know, like these boards right here. There's going to be 6 of those coming out. So what I did is I marked center on them, and on ours they had to be 26.5 inches apart, and it didn't interfere with any of the lag bolts, so I think we're going to be good. So then what we can do is the boards that come out will just be centered right on there. Of course they'll be at a slight angle, and I'm going to attach them from the back, and basically we're going to build the whole thing and then lag bolt it up to the wall and build the arms for it. So I'll show you how we do all that next. Now that our ledger board has been all marked and drilled and everything, we're working on the other pieces of red cedar. It's going to be the little, I don't know what you call them, we're calling them braces, the little studs or whatever. And if you notice on the old porch here, it has an angle to it where it mounted to the wall, and then the whole porch angled down. So we just did it the easiest way we could think of, and we just drew a straight line right down there. We measured the difference, 1.25 inches. So then we also just decided that we'll just go ahead and cut them at 45 inches just to make it even, so that way when you add 1.5 inches board over here and 1.5 inches ledger board back there, it'll be about 48 inches long. So that's what we're doing. We chopped them up over on the chop saw at 45 inches long, and then we just measured down 1.25 inches, went up to there. I'm gonna chop them down and we can actually assemble it. This side right here is going to be mounted straight to the ledger board, and then the front, I decided just to keep it straight. In the front, I guess you could call it the fascia board or whatever. When you look at it from the house, you know, ledger board will be straight. The front is going to go ahead and angle down. I think that'd be kind of an interesting look. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to chop them down and we're going to start building the frame. The awesome thing about this red cedar is it smells really, really great when you're cutting it. So we finally got all those stud braces, or whatever you want to call them, cut down. If you're curious how the 1.25 worked out, once I put it up on my miter saw, it ended up being about a 20-degree angle. So we cut them at 20 degrees. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm using my sander just to get rid of some of the saw marks. You kind of see up close here how it's a little bit rough, so we're going to smooth it out because all this wood is going to be exposed, and we're just going to coat it in oil once it's up. So I'm just smoothing them up a little bit with some 60 grit paper, and then we're going to start assembling the whole frame. All right, so now what we're doing is just assembling the frame. Pretty simple. All I did is I turned the ledger board upside down. We're taking the little stud braces or whatever upside down as well. We're lining up this tip to the bottom, and then we're just screwing them in. This impact driver works really nice. These are 3.5-inch coated screws with star ends on them. Work really great, and they're not going to rust on you or anything. And the star has really awesome traction when you're going through. So as we're doing is lining these up to the, I showed you lines earlier. We're just centering it up and screwing it together. Alright, so once all the angle cut sides of the boards were screwed down to the ledger board, we flipped it around. We put our front board here, I guess you could call it fascia board or whatever, and we're just screwing it down as well. And like I said, they're just 3-inch coated screws, and they won't rust, and they hold really well. Alright, so now this is upside down, so what we can do is flip it over, and we got some supports that's going to go across, but we're not going to put those on just yet. We're going to go ahead and try to mount this to the wall first. Here it is, all assembled. One thing I forgot to mention is you definitely want to make sure this thing's square. So we went ahead and screwed the front end on one side. After everything was screwed here, we screwed it, and then we just moved on to the end. But the very first thing we did was took a tape measure from that corner over to this corner. Happened to be 140 inches, and we measured from this corner to that. It was 140, so we were in square. If they'd have been off, we'd have had to adjust them until they were the same. And it was nice and square, so we were able to screw it all together, and now it can go on the wall.